Welcome back to Liberty and Finance and Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest who's been a favorite of our viewers over these past 6.5 years that we've had him on. Joel Salatin is the co-founder of Polyface Farms, a teaching farm with numerous outreaches, including having a major mentoring program where they have college and other interns there learning how to do self-sufficient and robust farming methods. He's got thousands of families that benefit from the food products that they produce, and they're here. He's here with us to talk to us about a looming food crisis or food shortage in our country, partially due to the COVID-19 economic lockdown of the world's economies and disruption to the supply chains. Joel, thanks for joining us again here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Don. Again, it's a joy to be with you.
We've also got Melody, my wife, joining us this day to help us field numerous questions that have been submitted by viewers ahead of this interview. And Melody is also here to help me out because she's the primary procurer of foodstuffs for our household, and is going to be really taking the viewpoint and helping voice those questions that are on the minds of lots of people who are quite concerned about where they're going to be obtaining their food from. So thank you, Melody, for joining us.
It's good to be here.
So, Joel, I was looking back over a number of the videos that we've done with you in the past, and I re-released a few of them over this weekend to kind of whet people's appetite for some of the topics we're going to get into about the food shortage and food crisis. Mm-hmm. But maybe you could start right from the beginning and explain what you believe are the main dynamics that people have concerns about, and then maybe whether those concerns are justified in your minds about availability and cost of food in the near, maybe next calendar quarter or two of the middle here of 2020.
So we it's like a lot of these kind of things. You have this kind of short-term thing, and then you have a long-term. And so what's happening here short-term, the U.S. has food. I don't think we have to worry about starvation here. What we do have to worry about is spot shortages. What's happening right now is that these major meat plants, I want you to think about it. I mean, at these big meat plants, and when I say big, I mean plants that employ 3,000 people. Mm-hmm. They slaughter 1,000 head of beef a day, 200,000 chickens.
Yeah, like Tyson or somebody like that.
Yes. Cargill, Tyson, Iowa Beef Packers, Cargill. Yes. Okay. So Purdue, right? So these are big. It's hard for the average person to appreciate how big these outfits are, and it's also hard to appreciate how conducive these plants are for everything yucky.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we're blood, guts, feather, hide, hair. It's damp, and it's cool, and it's dark, and it's concrete. It's all day, every day, and you've got all of these line workers that you can't spread out. There's not very much distance between a pancreas and a lung and a liver. So,
okay.
So, you're crammed in there. Here's the thing I want people to understand is think about all the changes that have happened in the workplace since the pandemic started. I mean, office buildings are shut down.
Right.
Working from home. Lots of businesses have shut down. The stadiums have shut down. Las Vegas has shut down. Churches have shut down. Funerals, weddings. The only place right now in the United States where large groups of people are congregating every day are big processing plants. That's the only place in the United States where large numbers of people are congregating right now.
Okay.
Now, many of these places are located in very rural areas. I saw a chart just 2 days ago that had little red balloons. Generally, the COVID-19 phenomenon has has certainly been centered in cities. The bigger the city, the denser the population, the bigger the problem.
Right.
The
New York, New York had it because of the subways. They're so compact. Yeah, New York City.
Yeah, Seattle, New Orleans, Atlanta. But in general, the rural areas have been not much. I mean, it's been here, but it's relatively minor.
Right.
Except where these big plants are.
Okay.
And the few counties where these, and there aren't that many of these big plants, where these big plants are. I mean, the Smithfield one that closed, the pork plant up in Sioux Falls,
right.
In Dakota, had 3,700 employees, and they do 5% of the nation's pork. Another one closed. The Tyson plant closed this week, and it does 5% of the nation's pork. Well, there's 10% of all the nation's pork. So what's happening is the food is being produced on the farms. Farmers have there's plenty of production out here. The problem is that when these workers, when the plants get the virus, and then workers get scared because they might get the virus and they don't come into work, the plant just they can't operate. I mean, a 3,000 person plant with 1,200 people out, they simply can't operate. I mean, because things are mechanized, they've got chains, they've got certain positions that have to be there, they've got certain overheads, they need a certain amount of throughput in order to fire up the energy to keep the ovens going. I mean, it's just they just can't operate because they're so huge. So here's the thing that you have to appreciate is that the food's being produced, but the problem is getting it processed so that it can get into the store for people to buy. Because most people, when they say, I want a T-bone steak, they don't mean they want a 1,000-pound steer coming through their front door.
Oh, but we really do.
They normally want a package, in cellophane wrap that they can get in the store or get from a farmer or something. So there's where the problem is. Now, the point is that there could not be a better vector for, and I'm sure you're very, Dunnigan, you and Melody are certainly well-versed, I'm sure, in the whole kind of what I call the counter-narrative to the orthodoxy right now, and there's more and more of it growing by the day as more data comes in, and is the lockdown justified?
Right.
And, in what civilization have we ever quarantined healthy people?
Right.
And I saw one today by two California emergency room doctors.
Yes, we saw that.
Isn't that? I mean, I'm just loving this. Now I can look at a person quarantining and say, why are you destroying my immune system? I need to touch you. I need to hug you to stimulate my microbiome. So anyway, there's that narrative going on.
Yes.
But the fact is, WeDoes is highly communicable. We don't want to belittle it.
Right.
But the most active, vibrant vector right now are these huge, large processing plants. There's one more thing about these plants that's important to realize, and I'm going to tell you right up front, this will sound racist. It is not. It is not. But the fact is that vitamin D, which comes from the sun, is one of it's. I think all doctors have agreed, pretty much all of them have agreed that vitamin D is one of the best deterrents for getting COVID-19. Get out in the sun.
Right.
Get out in the sun, get active, get vitamin D in your system. All right. One of the factors is that white-skinned people are about 3 times more efficient at metabolizing sunlight into vitamin D as dark-skinned people. All right. This is just scientific fact. So a dark-skinned person, they don't sunburn very easy. I'm just blacks, Hispanics, darker skinned. They don't sunburn as easily as a Swedish as a blonde. Okay,
right.
And so this is just a fact of life. This is not prejudicial or racial, and so most of these plants, remember these big processing plants, predominantly by long shot, like 90% or maybe more, are dark-skinned people. The one up in Smithfield in Dakota that closed down, the largest sector of their workforce was Ethiopian. That's where you get these. A couple families come, then they write back home and to the whole tribe and say, "Hey, we got these $15 an hour jobs. Man, we're making money, and come and join us." And so you get these little enclaves of
cultural groups. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
Cultural groups, exactly. And of course, typically, they don't live spread out like Americans. They don't hate their families; they love their families.
Yes,
Multi-generational, high density.
Right. Yeah.
A house where we think we're crowded with 4 people, they put 30 in there. And so you've got living conditions. Often you have bad diets. They're trying to scrimp and save money and send money home so Aunt Matilda can come and join them and her family, and so they're eating Spam and they're eating not great stuff, and they're crammed in the house. They're dark-skinned, and they're working in an environment that is like a sardine can of viral stimulant. So that's the situation that we're in our food system, and so if there's one thing, I think that there are several things, but if there's one thing we can certainly take away from the whole situation, it is the fragility of mega processing plants, industrial scale processing plants. Now, our family, we happen to co-own a very small slaughterhouse here in Harrisonburg, Virginia. We have about 20 employees. We do, between 30 and 50 beeves a week, maybe 100 hogs a week. Okay, it's a small community slaughterhouse, 20 people, and the vectors there. Yes, we do have numerous dark-skinned people, but certainly not any. It's a more normal percentage. It's like half. Okay, and we're spread out because we don't work so much with machines. It's craft work. We're working with knives. We're actually putting carcasses on a table. We're spread out at different workstations. So we're spread out, a lot fewer people, much better living conditions, better pay, and it's a completely different environment. Now, could we get it tomorrow? Yes. In fact, we have 2 guys. Both of them, one of them has really bad asthma. The other one is like 78 years old. Those 2 guys have elected to stay home for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's fine. We're paying them, and we'll look for them to come back as soon as possible. But they're in a compromised immune situation. But all the young guys and gals that are working in there, they're just going right along. So I think the decentralization, the takeaway is, it would be a much more stable food system if we decentralized it. You could even say democratized it, as opposed to centralization and consolidation, like we've seen, spreading it out across the countryside to have thousands of very small plants. It may not sound as efficient, but in the long run, it's far more resilient. And what we're finding now is even some of the, diehard Wall Street business gurus are saying, maybe we took efficiency one notch too far. Maybe we should back it off a couple notches and think about resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. You put all your eggs in one basket, and you don't have
Right.
complete control over that. You've talked to us for years about the regulations that are, we had one called ridiculous regulations and romaine recalls, I think was one of the interviews we did. And you talked about how so many of the regulations, which are sometimes almost written by the mega food industry giants, don't scale well down to the small scale. And here's an example, and it reminds us of the animal husbandry when it's scaled up to the factory, crowded conditions in those so-called free-range barns full of, as far as the eye can see, of chickens next to each other, that there's a fragility there that if one of them gets sick, they all get sick, that kind of thing. So now we're seeing it on the human side of that same coin.
On the human, it's an exact replica of what we've seen, these high-path avian influenza, the things that have attacked the industrial factory houses. That's now attacking us. I was just I had some Pennsylvania farmers visit me Saturday actually, and they said that six of their neighbors, they have neighbors that have these big factory chicken houses, and they said the day before the company came in and foamed 6 of them. That's a new phrase for your lexicon, chicken foaming. And what it is the processing plant couldn't take the chickens. The chickens are out here, they're on feed, they need to go to slaughter, but there's nobody there to slaughter them. And so what they do is they close up the house real tight, they close all the curtains, close all the windows, shut down the vents and the fans, and they pump a thing that looks like soap suds. It's not soap suds, but that's what it looks like. And it literally just drowns, it suffocates the chickens. It's called foaming. And they just did that to 6 houses. We're now seeing farmers beginning to euthanize their pigs because they can't get them to slaughter. And so that actually is, depleting the U.S. food supply. Again, it's not a farmer issue. It's not a production issue. It's a problem with the processing.
Right.
Right. That when you said that there was food available in the United States, people are concerned about it getting to where it needs to get to, and partly seems like you're describing that's because we've become so dependent on this industrial scale that there's no way to get it from where the food is to where the people need it.
Yeah. The initial shock, when all the grocery store shelves ran out of meat, especially, that initial shock was because of the segregated streams that go either to the restaurant trade, which includes institutions and convention centers and resorts and things, the commercial trade versus the retail trade. Those are 2 extremely different trajectories. They're very different pathways, different packaging, different trucking, different warehousing, different. And so when Kroger's is short of chicken, they can't just call up Cargill and say, we need more chicken, because Cargill has a whole, chain creating chicken for Kentucky Fried Chicken, for example. And that's what they do. There's a plant here in Harrisonburg, Virginia, not 30 miles from us. And I think they make something like 80% of all the Kentucky Fried Chicken nuggets of some sort, and chicken type material, and so that plant, they can't suddenly turn out whatever boneless breasts for a retail Kroger trade. They can't retool and do that. And so the initial glitch was this. It was not production. It was not processing. It was clear at the far end of the marketing where those are segregated channels. The industry has already compensated for that and is diverting a lot of that restaurant and commercial trade into the retail trade. So that's taking a lot of edge off the retail trade. The processing plant situation is a little more. It's a little tougher because it's a biological thing. It's not just a techno fix or just a protocol fix. Well, we'll do this instead of that. It's the virus. It's a different thing. So it'll be interesting to see how long this lasts. I know that one plant that was down has already come back online. I suspect that this will be relatively short-lived.
That's one of the questions, Joel, that's being asked by our viewers. We have a viewer, J.D. Smith, who asks, what is a timeline estimate of the food shortage coming to the United States? People are just looking out, and they're not seeing, other than maybe people did some panic buying, over the past month. But other than that, they're not seeing yet prices spiking or complete unavailability of things. What do you see?
Well, we've seen unavailability of toilet paper.
Some products, but food specifically.
Right, food specifically.
We've seen
eggs sometimes,
some
some
fresh products, some fresh chicken or that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I think that we're going to see some pretty big disruptions over the next month. I think because when this stuff can't get processed, it can't get processed. I mean, right now we're seeing dairy farmers dump milk. We're seeing potato farmers plowing in potatoes, and then we have the ban on immigration. That's gonna hurt the
migrant picking. Yeah,
the migrant picking. That's going to make prices go up, or just be unable to get them. I mean, what they need to do is stop all government welfare, and then Americans would go back to work. But that's another story for another day.
Right.
I mean, the fact that we have become this dependent on foreign labor, this dependent on things beyond our control. I mean, you got to realize right now, 20% of all food consumed in America, in just the last, I think it's just 30 years. It's very, very recent. Has gone from less than 5% of food consumed in America to 20% of food consumed in America is now not grown in America. I think it's amazing that in December, I think it was December the 11th maybe, or the 10th, something like that. It was right there in December before Christmas. The State Department, for the first time, part of our China agreements and things, was to allow the importation of China-grown chicken into the United States. And that just occurred in December. I wonder how many Americans trust Chinese-grown chicken.
That's horrifying.
Right. Yeah, and if it's not, and if they're saying you don't have to label it, that's not. And I think didn't that just pass too, that it doesn't necessarily have to be labeled, right?
That's right. As long as it comes not in the final retail package, and it has to be repackaged here. Mm-hmm. It can be packaged product of America, product of the U.S.
Yeah,
that's the same for beef, lamb, anything. It can come from Australia, whatever, Uruguay, Paraguay, as long as it's repackaged here for retail sale, it can go on with a product of USA label.
Right.
So what's happening here is kind of a major aha moment. I mean, I consider myself fairly, well read or whatever, keep up on stuff. But I remember the night that I saw on the news that 96% of all American pharmaceuticals come from China. Right. Did you remember that?
Yeah, I remember hearing it. I don't remember that. I certainly didn't realize that so much of our pharmaceutical stuff came from China. No, I didn't know that.
I didn't either. And I'll bet if you put out a survey to Americans, say, how many of you knew 3 months ago that 96% of American pharmaceuticals come, or pharmaceuticals in the pharmacy come from China? I bet you not 1 in 1,000 Americans knew, but now everybody knows. And so I think what's happened is a very kind of an unveiling, if you will, of some concerns, fragility, lack of trust, if you will, in some of these, in the food chain, in the political rhetoric, in the promises, in whatever. And that is pushing people to turn to their communities. And I can tell you, I stay in touch with a lot of farmers, stay really in tune with a lot of farmers across the U.S. that are like us, where we're basically local oriented, or certainly direct market. We don't sell in Walmart. We have our own customers, whether we ship to them or we sell to them at farmers market, or they come to our farm, or drop points, or all the above. The point is that we're actually direct marketing in some way. We own our customers. Every single one of us across the country, the coronavirus is the best thing that ever happened to our business. I mean, we're having the best financial year by a long, even though we've lost our we service 50 restaurants. We've probably lost 40 of them. But the retail has more than made up for all the restaurant loss. Does that mean I wish we hadn't lost the restaurants?
Of course.
But it's indicative of the striking. I mean, we've had people come in who have never thought about local food, never thought about know your farmer, know your food, never thought about any of this stuff, and they've come in and said, I'm never going back to the supermarket. I don't trust any of them anymore, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that kind of thing is being said on a pretty dramatic scale. Teresa, my wife, was in, she was getting some new, what do you call them, oven. They're the little plates that go under your burners, in the oven. So
reflectors?
Drip pans, yeah.
Okay.
All right, she's yelling at me. Yeah, drip pans in the oven and under the burners. Yeah. Okay. I'm being coached here. And the store, we shop at a local appliance store, and there's all this empty space. And what was that? It was freezers. He said I could sell. He said I had a freezer in here, promised to a guy. I could have sold that freezer 50 times. And he said I can't get another freezer until August 1st.
Wow.
There's just a total run on freezer. Well, to me, that's healthy. That's a good thing. I'm thrilled that seed companies had to shut down their websites for 3 days to catch up because they couldn't handle all the seed orders. I've already been told that if you're going to can this summer, you better get your supplies in right now, because there have been more gardens go in this year than ever in history of the U.S. And so there's going to be people freezing and canning and gardening. Those are really good things. I think this has, for the abundance that is the U.S. and the way we can depend on the supermarket, to always be there. I think that's taken a major hit here. And so people are. Goodness, Homesteaders of America conference, Homesteaders of America conference. They do a conference here in Virginia every year. They have thousands of people come, and last week in one day, they had 10,000 people register on their website. 10,000 people
That's
in
amazing.
a day for Homesteaders of America.
That's great.
That's a very, very positive trend. Now, for us, what we've seen, we've never sold so many little 2s and 3s and 4s, pullets and laying hens for backyard flocks. People are buying. They're getting chickens. There's a run on it. Hatcheries. You can't get a chick in the country. There's just a run on them. They're backlogged like 2 months. Yeah, I see this as, this is bigger than Y2K. It's bigger than...
It's a big wake-up call.
Well, it sounds like one of the positive unintended consequences here is that people are learning, hey, I can't always depend on the grocery store to be there, or the meat's going to be there. I better start doing local, and maybe also tending to my own family so I can have my little backyard farm. Maybe that's a really good unintended consequence of this coronavirus, it's really waking up more people.
Right, I
think
agree.
That's a great thing.
I read a book recently. It was fascinating. It was a book. It was written by I can't think of her name, the lady who housed the Anne Frank family during the Nazi
Corrie ten Boom.
occupation. Well, no, not Corrie ten Boom, but it was the family who housed them in the secret room. And so these folks were the ones who went out and got the food and did. And the most interesting thing of the book to me was, I mean, thousands of people in Amsterdam starved. I mean, they just starved to death. The people who did not starve were people who knew somebody in the country. They could get to the country to get something. It might have been just potatoes or turnips or, a side of pork or whatever, but it was a cousin, it was a friend, it was an acquaintance of an acquaintance of an acquaintance. But the people who survived were the ones that had some sort of a direct contact with a farm. And boy, if that isn't a prescient thing for our time, to realize that kind of resiliency is the same throughout history, throughout time. If there's one place you don't want to be in calamity, it's in the middle of a great big city.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people, friends in New York, say, when this is over, you're going to see a mass exodus from New York. They're going to go wherever they can go. They're going to find other places. I have a realtor friend. He said you wouldn't believe the number of people that are looking for 5 and 6 and 7 acre spots in the country. I mean, but of course, right now nobody wants to list because they don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
So there's kind of a moratorium on listings because nobody wants to make big financial decisions.
Right.
So what was listed 3 months ago is it, and as that inventory drops down, there's going to be it's going to be a hot market. So yeah, I think that overall, this has definitely gotten people's attention, and it has brought people. And another good thing, it has brought people home. Home centricity. We have been decades basically emptying our home, except for Netflix and entertainment centers. But other than that, essentially, home has just been a pit stop between the things that are important in life.
Right.
And,
families coming together or having to be together now. There's no, bringing in a babysitter, or so people are working from home, and it's great that they're spending more time with their kids. Back to the food, I wanted to get to a question because I thought this was a good one. It kind of is about you. It's kind of a different kind of a question, but about storing food rather than, starting your own garden and stuff. And Gatology 30 Cal asks, what do you think is the most effective way to purchase and store bulk food? And she's not talking, or he is not talking about buckets of freeze-dried or MREs, but like an economical way. If you don't have a membership with Costco and stuff, you just go to Walmart and put it in the buckets yourself, like rice, beans, lentils. And if so, any suggestions on that?
Well, certainly buying bulk. You can get 50-pound sacks of oats, of things that you can sprout, and those things store without freezer, without electricity, as long as you keep the rats out of them. It stores very well. Now, when it comes to meat, one of the absolute best things you can do, if you're truly thinking long term, is buy bulk. Get a half a beef. You can save lots, up to 20% usually. By getting getting a half a beef as opposed to just cuts, and then you just go ahead and can it. And you can can meat, you can can venison, you can can chicken, and it lasts for years and years and years. Doesn't have to be frozen. If the power goes out, you still have it. And the beauty is, it's already cooked.
Yeah.
So even if worse came to worse, and you're in a survival situation, you can eat cooked cold meat canned that's 10 years old.
Wow. See, I would have never thought of canning meat. That's yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. We've done that. We've canned, venison, chicken. You can can pot pie. You can can you can can almost anything. And it's already cooked, and the beauty is it doesn't take electricity to keep it.
Right.
So that's probably the cheapest, most long-term, safest way to keep it.
How long do you think canned goods last if you've canned? Because they, when you buy them at the store now, they do have an expiration date on them. So just curious, like, how long typically do you think if you can them well and you do the right, they're sealed correctly and all of that?
Glass mason jars.
Yeah,
here,
glass
right?
mason jars. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the key to canned meat. Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't have any trouble with it for 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm not a food scientist, and I'm not paranoid either. But look, as long as it stays sealed and vacuumed, I mean, you can can peaches, and if the seal isn't broken, it can be 10 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
But the key to the meat. Here's the thing about the meat. We've done that here, and Teresa has, and I've watched. And the key there is you can't fill the jar up, because when you can it, of course, it's cooking, it's boiling in there, and so if the juice comes up around the ring,
right, you'll ruin
and
the
it's
seal.
in that rubber seal, it won't actually seal. So when you're canning meat, you got to leave a little bit of space there, an inch, to make sure you don't get the grease up in the broth. The broth, yeah, up in the seal. But other than that, no, it cans just fine.
Interesting. We have a question here from Carolina Contracting, and it's back to the question about the large processing plants. It says, is the problem mainly staffing that's causing plants to close down? You certainly talked about concerns around that. Or also red tape that prevents farmers from selling direct to customers other than smaller smaller suppliers?
That's a loaded question. Certainly, the obvious thing right now is it's primarily a sickness issue. That there is a spike. There's a spike in the work pool sickness. So that's the acute thing. The second part of the question is that, right? Yes, if farmers were if our food system habitat encouraged small-scale, community-centered, neighborhood-friendly food processing facilities, and this isn't just meat, slaughterhouses. I mean, goodness, our county in the 1930s, our county had commercial canneries. We had like 10 of them in the county. Now there's not a single one. But these were like community canneries that would serve the community, and they had, great big canners and some equipment in there, and it was essentially like a library. You had your membership card, and that entitled you to go in and you schedule it. My family will use this Monday from 10 to 4, and it's got automatic pea shellers and automatic green bean cutters, and this was a service that was offered as an entrepreneurial service in the community, because there were so many people canning large quantities of stuff. I mean, Teresa cans, 800 quarts of stuff a summer. I mean, we've got a whole basement full of everything from, tomato juice to squash and applesauce. And when we make applesauce, we get, 6 bushels of apples. Every bushel will make about, 20 quarts maybe of applesauce. And we make applesauce, and make 80 quarts of applesauce. That's our year's supply of applesauce. And I mean, that's just the way we live. And it's way, way cheaper than the store. We know where it came from. We get it from a biological orchard near us. Doesn't use any sprays. And and it's cost competitive. Does it take us some time? Yeah, it takes some time, but I think people are finding out now that maybe time can be spent in different ways. Maybe our frenzied, hectic,
Yes.
time-consumptive consumerism entertainment cult could be more valuable spent learning some culinary skills, sourcing some food, building a relationship with a farmer, those kinds of things. That has value too.
Right. Yeah, we have another question, and I think you touched on this. And Dunnigan and I have thought, in the future in the near future anyway, that real estate prices would go down. But you had a different take on it. And this question is from FED. He's asking, Joel, do you see land prices coming down in the near future, the next couple of years? Is today a great time to become a farmer? Where do you see the future of small farms and farms like yours going?
Yeah, well, I think the future for farms like ours is very, very bright. In fact, I think that's the trend of the future. And this shakeup has certainly been a shot in the arm to it. Now, what is that? What are we going to see with land prices? In general, land prices don't go down.
Okay.
They might dip for a time. In fact, they probably will. I think Dunnigan, you might have a lot better sense than I do. I try to stay up with it, but I'm not an economist. I don't know I'm seeing people say we're going to go into hyperinflation with all this injection of 4 trillion, whatever it is, trillions of dollars of printed money into the system, and then others are saying we're going to go into depression, and I don't know what that future. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really does. That seems like there is those countervailing forces of that might end up with stagflation, where you could get the worst of both. You might get anemic to no growth and prices still rising. But you've talked to us, the other aspect of this that you've talked to us in the past about was the demographic of American farmers. So that's got to be tied into this somehow.
Yeah, and that demographic is not going away. I mean, the fact that the average American farmer is 60 years old, that's not going away. And so we're going to see accelerating amounts of land for sale. The question, though, is the acceleration of farmland for sale going to be faster than the desire of urban people looking for a safety safety net or a bunker?
Interesting.
I can tell you, we service many urban customers. Some are not wealthy, and some are fairly wealthy, and many of them are interested in, for fun, I just call it a bunker, but a country bunker, so that it's...
No, it's country bumpkin. You're pronouncing it right.
No. Bumpkin versus bunker, yeah. That's pretty
Archie
good.
Bumpkin.
But a country bunker.
Yes.
That if things go south, if things don't go well, they can always retreat to this country bunker. Mm-hmm. The problem is they don't know anything about farming. They don't know how to do it, and so we've actually put the word out to our people and say, look, if you want a country bunker and you want it to be there for you, buy it. We'll manage it. We'll take care of the land and manage it and pay the taxes on it, and it'll be near to us. And if and when things go south, if you can get to it, you'll be part of our community, and we'll weather it together.
Interesting.
And we've actually had a fairly cadre of 30 people who have signed me up. How do we get into this? So I'm actually back and forth with them on email. Are you for real? Are you kicking tires and that sort of thing? You kind of vet them out, but there is a real a kind of a shaking in the land on this kind of thing, and so right now we don't see land prices dropping. I don't see it, at least in the near term. But if we go into depression, it certainly might.
Interesting. Sounds like you're in a sweet spot there, perhaps as a facilitator or a bridge, a conduit for people who are trying to consider the viability of that transition from an urban life to a more sustainable rural life, and you can be a facilitator for them. It's a very interesting niche. I wonder how you could replicate that. That's really great.
I wanted to just, I'm sorry, but there's an interesting question here that now kind of, I don't know if you've heard of this, but Josh G. is asking, have you heard that the coming United Nations Agenda 21 and 2030 policies seek to limit the amount of square feet a person or family can live in under a half an acre, as well as force people into city zones, deeming all rural and country areas as wilderness preserve and not for human visitation? Have you heard of these policy plans, and how would you plan to deal with them? It kind of seems like flies in the face of opposite of what you're thinking if people are going to be fleeing the cities now. I mean,
yes.
Have you heard of this?
Oh, absolutely. I'm very aware of that. Look, first of all, I don't dwell in conspiracy. Look, if you start reading alternative stuff, you can certainly come into conspiracy pretty quickly. But I just find it unhealthy for me. If it is all the Illuminati and the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations and name the Rothschilds, name
right, name the
evil bunch, then it's really pretty hopeless. So I just find that I can't do anything about it. If that is true, I can't do anything about it anyway. Now, have I read The Creature from Jekyll Island? Yep, I have. And so I'm not. I don't think that the deep state is. I think the deep state does exist, absolutely. But in general, I do think that the power of personal choice, and if people know and act on good information, it will usually thwart the machinations of people. I mean, the fact that even the power of John D. Rockefeller could not thwart doing away with the prohibition, should give us all encouragement.
Right.
That I mean, the Soviet Union fell. The Berlin Wall fell.
Exactly.
I mean, these things happen, and there were certainly powerful interests that didn't want that to happen. Very powerful interests. But when and today, the democratization of information is profound beyond anything, and so we do have, we do have a lot of alternative, sources of. Like this,
yes.
like this.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's great. That's I love the message of hope there. That's wonderful. Thank you for
a related question here from Scott Ellis says, Mr. Salatin, do you think the current events the world is experiencing will increase or decrease government regulations and oversight of our food in the near future?
That's a great question. He did limit the question to food. I thought he was just going to ask generally regulations. I think that this will greatly increase regulations. But here's what I think. Now, there will be some people who disagree with me and think we really are going to go into some food shortages, and we may. Let me tell you this. If these big plants can't get back up and running for whatever reason, whether it's immigration policy, whether it's worker fear, actual sickness problems, whatever it is, if people actually start going hungry because they can't get food, people like us will begin processing our animals on farms, and nobody is going to take us to jail for getting food to people. It will be too. What you have then is you just have a wink, wink black market, because people are going to get food. However they can get it, they're going to get food, and so and farmers are going to produce it, and farmers are going to try to stay in business, and
or it could even go even more so that way of the Wartime Powers Act saying every farmer will get a letter saying you shall start producing food at the following rates and so on. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be. It could be. I think things would have to get pretty dire to get to that point. I mean, one of the things that's I've heard, and just in the industry, is, well, what if inspectors refuse to come into work? I mean, remember, these bureaucrats, they're federal meat inspectors, and they're being sent right into these hotbeds of COVID-19. If I were an inspector, I'd be a little bit squeamish about going in there. So one of the big questions is, what if all the inspectors walk off the job? What if they say, no, we ain't going in there? Well, the day that happens, suddenly nobody's going to care whether the meat was inspected or not, because people are going to demand food.
Right.
And so I don't know I think in general, yes. I think you and I probably agree that it's almost shocking how fast, how easily people give up freedom for a little security.
Yes.
It's truly shocking. So in general, yes, I think this is and that's where the conspirators comes in. Is this a dry run for
right.
the New World Order or whatever? But if we take that away from just the food itself, people get really resourceful about growing, transacting, and acquiring food. They get really, really resourceful. And I think that if things actually broke down, if society broke down as much as some of the most extreme pundits are saying, then I think in chaos we just completely fracture. We fracture into neighborhood food systems, and nobody cares whether an inspector saw it or not.
Okay. We have another question from Jam. It says, does the U.S. government have a sufficient seed library? Should each family prepare their own seed library?
The government does have a seed library, but the much better seed library, if you will, is in the thousands, the tens of thousands of seed savers exchanges around the country. There are clubs, and I would encourage you to join one. Almost every area, bioregion. These are way more common than just states, but every state probably has, 10, 12 groups that exchange seeds. I mean, it's like it's a fraternity. It's a group, and you exchange seeds. And I grow these wonderful tomatoes. I keep tomato seeds. John over there, man, he's got the wonderful zucchinis, these heirloom zucchinis, and he keeps heirloom zucchini seeds. And so these seed swaps happen all over the country all the time. And there are entire seed companies that have grown out of these basically hobbyist seed swappers. It's a very vibrant seed saving fraternity in the country, and that's where the seeds are going to be preserved. It's not going to be in the government. It's going to be in the pantries and in the refrigerators and freezers and little seed-saving cubicles of hobbyists around the country.
Very good.
We've got a question that kind of circles back to something that people are concerned about who do live in metro areas, which is, a lot of folks and have become dependent on the grocery store as their pretty much their sole source of food. Ray West asked, in a metropolitan area, how long from when resupply is no longer available until the supermarket shelves are bare?
The average urban sector has 3 days of food in the urban sector. So every city, if you like could draw a crayon around the boundaries of a city, that's the average city has 3 days supply of food in that city. That's not very much. So the city depends on a supply chain that's in a warehouse, somewhere. And that's where this glitch happened as people started panicking for food, was we've all gone to just-in-time inventory. The greater culture has gone to just-in-time inventory. And the problem is, in just-in-time inventory, it sounds, it's wonderful when everything's working beautiful. But if there's a Teamster strike, if there's a coronavirus, if there's an energy glitch, refinery burns down, you can't get fuel. There's a million little things. If there's any glitch, just-in-time means exactly what it says. When I order it, there's not much down the line from me.
Right.
It's a very lean chain coming up. Whereas a farm like us and farms like us around the country, we don't practice just-in-time inventory because we want to take care of our customers, and we know that there are droughts and floods and hurricanes, and so we keep an inventory of 3, 4, 5 months out there so that we can service our customer base when there's a glitch, when there's a shortage. If the local processor has to do a 3-week remodel, these things happen, and so we typically have a much longer inventory than the average. Now, it took us a month to go through about 3 months of inventory.
Right.
Wow, yeah.
Even now, we're down to just hand them out. We're going every week to slaughter, and we're replenishing as we go. But we're goodness. I think Friday they told me that our beef page on our shipping cart, our shopping cart, on beef, the only thing that was on there was kidneys. That's never happened before. Now, we're going to have a bunch more on there this week.
Okay.
We just went with another bunch to the slaughterhouse, but that just shows how, even our inventory is down. But that is also why local farmers like us were able to step into the gap so quickly when the supermarkets were low, was because we did have inventory, because that's the way we operate. We don't operate in just in time. So for the metropolitan friend, what can be done? Well, what can be done is to you should stockpile some yourself. Dave Ramsey says you should have 3 to 6 months of cash laid up,
right,
for emergencies. And he never talks about food, but I always want to say, and 3 to 6 months worth of food. You should have something in the freezer, something in the canned goods, something in the pantry, dried goods. You should have something there so that you can go 3 to 6 months. If every American had 3 to 6 months worth of cash and 3 to 6 months worth of food, and when this thing hit, what a different emotional shock it would have been. Yep. had each family just had that.
Yeah, I think we met that. We're real grateful for any preparations we had made, because we felt we weren't out there fighting with the other zombies for the toilet paper. Well, Joel, we're up against the time here, and we just are grateful for this. There's more questions that we're going to have a chance to get to. Just on your way out the door, though, if you could give us a clue of people who think this could all just go away if everybody just started backyard gardening. That process, realistically, how quickly can somebody become productive, if they want to start doing it. So can't get chicks; those are already gotten. It sounds like, and
Right.
it isn't something you
Right.
flip a light switch on and suddenly have a productive garden in your backyard a week later.
Yeah. Well, if I could, I'll just make one shameless promotion. We now ship nationwide, so we're
That's
glad
great.
to ship to anybody that wants something from us.
Okay,
And we're
you
doing
want
our
to tell
best
us where how
we're
they should
ramping up.
contact you?
Yeah. Just go to Polyface Farms, our website, and you can jump right on there. But as far as how fast can you do this, goodness, you could get right now a bag of mung beans, alfalfa seeds, and you can put a quart jar in your windowsill, and you can have fresh sprouts in a week.
Yep, that's
so
true.
you can begin farming you can have food from your farm within 1 week of today. So this can be a pretty fast turnaround. I mean, you can put in a bed in your backyard or some sort of a vertical a tube, get a drum. I mean, you can look under barrel pocket gardens, and you can see how to make your own plastic 55-gallon pocket garden with like 57 pockets in it, and you can grow all of your herbs in that single barrel that you can have on your porch or in your backyard, whatever, on your rooftop. You can start something pretty quickly, and of course, produce has a pretty fast turnaround time. I mean, lettuce, microgreens, 14 days, lettuce, 30 days. So this is not something you have to wait till fall. If you start something now, you'll be enjoying it all summer long, and that would just be a wonderful thing.
Well, Joel, it's been too long since we've had you on, and we've got to have you back again. I think the topic of food availability and food integrity, for goodness sakes, is going to be on everybody's mind over this year, and that's probably a good thing. So thanks, Joel Salatin, co-founder of Polyface Farms, for joining us here again on Liberty and Finance and Reluctant Preppers.
Yes, thank you very much. And again, why don't you tell people how they can get a hold of you to get some of your wonderful food?
Sure, just Polyface, Polyface. That's all you have to do. In fact, you get about POLYF, and it'll pop right up.
That's
and
great.
Get on our website there, and you can see the inventory.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
If you've decided that now is the right time for you to protect your family's financial future by acquiring physical precious metals, gold and silver, I'm delighted to let you know that I have now become a licensed dealer's representative for Miles Franklin, one of the oldest and most trusted names in bullion dealerships. And we can provide you with physical delivery to your personal possession or to professional vault storage or precious metals IRAs. Just email me at libertyandfinance@protonmail.com, and please include your name and phone number in your email to libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. We'll get right back with you and find out how to best meet your needs so that you can either begin or increase your acquisition of physical precious metals now and protect your family's future starting today.